Yeah, we may as well start. I mean, so we're trying out different introductions because we caught some flack not that long ago about our standard. Hey, welcome to the So we're trying out different things, and here we are on the podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Kyle Jon, and with me, as always, is co-host John Grant. John, say hello.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to halfway through our conversation with today's guest.
Which is fantastic.
You're going to wish you had been here for the first part of our conversation.
That's right. I just couldn't hit the record button fast enough. I got the technical challenges here. But we're here now. So I'm glad you're with us wherever you might be. So quick, what is Ripple Intent? We're a nonprofit organization based in Colorado that is focused on improving people and helping us become better people, better teammates, and better leaders. We do that through a variety of events, including breakfast clubs and symposiums. You can find us all over the web. But one of the ways that we help share what we know is by interviewing some pretty awesome people on our podcast, like the guest we have today, who is Patti Larson. She joins us all the way from Texas. Go ahead and say hi, Patti. Introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Patti Larson. I have been in the AEC industry for longer than I care to admit, but really grew up in the industry and love it. And I'm so happy I found Ripple Intent. And so glad that you exist, and I'm very happy to be here.
Very cool. Thank you for being here. We were talking about a variety of things just before, like John alluded to. But we're going to jump right in because I crossed paths with Patti not that long ago, and I guess it was a while ago, and time flies. Just struck me as an amazing person as we were talking, because I was introduced to her and we had a conversation, and in that conversation became pretty clear to me that she is, when we talk about being all about the people, she is all about the people. There's this strong conviction and belief system about people first, to the point to where we were talking about some of her experiences. But before we get into those, because they're pretty interesting, I want to know how what does this people-centric viewpoint and lifestyle look like for yourself, for those around you, and how did it come to be?
How did my focus become on that?
Yeah, how did you? So many people are focused on all the other stuff, material success, position, leadership. I want to do this, I want to do that, but all of that seems to be a byproduct of what your focus is, which is the people.
Yeah. Well, I think for me, and this is going to sound probably silly, but it comes down to having fun. And if you're not with people who are enjoying what they do and excited about what they do and want to get something done together, I'm not enjoying myself. So I kind of want to be around people who are feeling like they're using their skills to the best of their ability, that they're being recognized for that they're a part of a team, that they belong there, that they're heard. So I think, to me, that is the basis of everything that all the success comes from. And that's just been something that I think, like I mentioned earlier before we started recording, that, my initial interest was sociology and focusing on the systems that people work within and what works well and what doesn't. So I think my focus has always been on how people behave, and what makes people tick. And I'm a total introvert, but I love people, and I want them to be happy and successful. And I think you have to focus on that if you want to have a thriving workplace and a thriving project or whatever you're trying to accomplish. It's going to go better if if you pay attention to the people on your team.
What does that look like, paying attention to people on your team?
I think it depends on, what your role is in the particular team that you're on. But like for me, I've had mentors that just created the space for me to speak when, I was a young person when I got into this industry, a young woman. It's changed a lot in the last 20 years or so. But in the beginning, it was very much just be over there and, look cute and do whatever you're doing. Right. And then it so I kind of bought into that. And we used to laugh about saying that we were going to age out of the construction industry because we wouldn't be these just like happy little things running around the office anymore. And thankfully that's really changed.
What?
Wow.
It's changed a lot. But you know, I had a boss at one point that invited me to the table and made space for me to be able to speak. And I cannot emphasize enough how much that changed my career and my ability to actually perform well. And it was because he noticed that I was trying to say something and people kept talking over me, and he shut them up and gave me a chance to speak. And after that, it was, I grew my voice and was able to start doing that for myself. And people started wanting to hear what I had to say. So I, you know, so it was just this huge transformation because he was paying attention in a meeting, right? Like, and it just changed my whole ability to do my job because he gave that space to me. So like, that's paying attention to people, right? And wanting to hear the voices of everybody that you've brought to the table. And allowing them to have that, you know, that space to do it, and giving them the courage to say what they want to say. And honestly, we did an exercise one time where we had Post-it notes and we were putting like, what do you think the most important thing is? And of course I'm thinking, oh, people, culture, that's the most important thing. And everybody else was revenue and, you know, safety and all of that other stuff, which is also very important. But to me, you know, so they have like all of the Post-it notes are on one side and I'm literally on the other side by myself, right? Like, but they allowed me to do that, you know, and it ended up being a huge focus for us as a company that when I was there, and it was very successful. And it was, you know, kind of one of our key motivating things to get and keep people. So yeah, I think I just have had the opportunity to work with a lot of people like that, which has been great.
Well, now I want to know what happened. So you're in this isolated Post-it note land, or it's just you, and you've got this sea of Post-its on the other side. And did anyone look at you and go, "What are you talking about?" Or was it, "Oh, of course you would do that"?
No, it was a bit like that. And I think that it just led to lively discussion, and it wasn't like I got my way, like, okay, everybody agrees with Patti that this is the most important thing, but it becomes part of the discussion, right? And it becomes part of the goal instead of just being an afterthought. So I think, you know, companies are always creating culture, either intentionally or unintentionally, and it's always happening. So you might as well pay attention to it and make it something that you actually want to work within, and that you want, you know, the kind of people you want to attract. All of that stuff comes from your intentionality around culture building. Like for example, like we had, you know, there's a lot about like, oh, do they fit in to the culture, right? So instead of saying, do they fit in, we started trying to do they add something to the culture? Because if you're only getting people that fit in, you're not getting any new ideas, right? So you want people to be additive, not just, well, they'll think like me, they dress like me, they look like me, they went to my alma mater. They're, you know, you have to want to have people who bring more to the table than what you bring, which can be really hard because then you end up with like tough conversations and people who might disagree with you, you know, like have different perspectives and make you feel silly sometimes, you know, but that I think you get the best results when you have different perspectives.
I think it would be hard to assess if someone fits in your culture if you haven't been intentional about even defining what your culture is.
Which, yeah, I mean, that's when you kind of fall into like that sort of accidental culture, right? Like if you, I've worked at places where it's like, oh, we hire everybody from Chico State, or we hire everybody from Cal Poly, right? And so they look different maybe, but they all have the same education. They all have the same experience. They all have the same thing. So it's like, are you really creating different ideas and bringing in different people? It's just like, I love it when they start bringing in, you know, let's focus on getting some veterans in here, or let's focus on, you know, bringing in people with a different background than just they went to, you know, they went to this school and they got nothing wrong with the schools. The schools are great, but it's just, having an open mind to bringing in something that might make you uncomfortable because they think differently than you, and being okay with that because they might be right.
So I know you, so you've worked at organizations that are more apt to do that than
Yes.
others. Talk about what that looks like, especially on the good side. So the ones who I do a big sigh here because I think most people in the world they listen to what you're describing and they're like, that sounds so ideal and it's not where I work.
Yeah.
They feel either trapped or they feel like maybe their team is really cool, but the greater organization is not, or maybe aspects of the people they work with, or, maybe the only way to really achieve a true good culture is to work in a small company, and it's not achievable in a medium or a large size. And so there's all kinds of perceptions out there about it. So I'd love to hear you give us a little more detail around where you've worked that you've seen that intention behind culture be successful. Maybe not 100% by any means, but more so than other places.
Yeah. So, well, DPR is a great example, right? Like, and I haven't worked there in a long time. When I worked there, they were a fairly small, they were not small. They had like, 10 offices or 12 offices or something, but they're now like a multi-billion-dollar international builder. And their culture is it's a flat organization. How do you maintain a flat organization when you have 50 offices and you've acquired 10 different companies, and and they're used to hierarchy, and how do you balance all that? And I've been watching it from the outside now, but they've managed to hold on to some of their key beliefs, I think, which really helps guide them through all of the decisions that they make. So they have these, their core values, and they stick to those. And if you make decisions based on what you truly believe is the right way to go, I think you can hang on to the important parts of it and give people that kind of freedom to continue to grow and to continue to, be successful and to feel like they fit in somewhere. I worked at a company, XL Construction, in the Bay Area, and they had started the company with, everybody, you need values. So we're going to put some values down. And they were great. The safety, we're going to be safe. We're going to, like all of that, integrity, the just kind of standard things. And when I got there, after I'd been there for a little bit, and I snuck in that, and they had already been, they were a good culture, right? They had the bocce ball court, they had the, the wine bar, all of the important things for culture building, the barbecue. But they were like, they didn't feel satisfied with the way the core values, right? Like it didn't really represent the company. And we went through this just coolest process of talking to so many people within the company and really like nailing down what people felt was important and what they loved about the company and why they stayed. And we created new values based on those really key things that people felt was integral to why they wanted to be there. And then just like we make decisions based on that now. This is how we do things. And I think they've been super successful as well, right? And it's when you're in a professional services environment, the people are all you have. That is who you're offering to build a project or who you're offering to team up with. If you don't have the people that you need that are motivated and excited and happy and smart and talented and all of those things, you don't have anything good to sell. And if you're not making them feel that way, they will find somewhere else to go, or they'll start their own company and they'll do it themselves, So a lot of great companies have spawned from other companies that weren't treating people well. So
this is what we were joking about when we got started, because this is so impactful. What you just said is not what owners or clients experience from architects, contractors, and so forth. What ultimately happens is you just said it, is if you're in a services firm, and it doesn't matter, it could be construction management, it could be IT services, it could be development service, it could be all kinds of different things. But if you're in the services business and what you're selling is your people, if you look at your last proposal, chances are you are not selling the people. Chances are the people might be in there because you have to fill some roles.
Mm-hmm.
But what you're actually selling is the company. Look at all the things we've done and look at how great we are and look at our process. And by the way, here's the few people who are going to bring all that to your table. The people are ultimately in those proposals often an afterthought, which still, that's the part that really intrigues me about you is you're like, why would you do that? That is the dumbest way to get work.
Yeah, I feel like I think again, maybe it's just the companies I've worked for that have focused on we need to bring the right team to the table for the jobs that we want to win. And if you particularly like if you're wanting to grow from doing, tenant improvements to doing ground up work, you could pitch a team that's done 500 tenant improvements all day long, but you're probably not going to get the ground up work job if they don't have it on their resume. So there's some value to individual resumes being able to perform the job and having some experience and lead a team doing the kind of project that you want, that you're trying to get. And if you have that in your resume in the proposal and they show up for the interview and they win the job, and then you throw in a different project manager at the end that doesn't have that experience, people are going to get upset, right? Like that's not what you sold them. And I feel like that's just asking for trouble. First of all, it's going to impact the project. It's going to impact all of the outcomes. It's going to impact the relationships, all of that. So I think having the right team and having them be the ones that are representing the company for a particular project. I mean, construction, it's also dynamic, right? Like there's so many different personalities, and for a project to go really well, those personalities matter, and they have to gel, and they have to have the right experience, and they have to be able to accomplish the goals. And I mean, I've seen projects that people still talk about. There was a Biogen IDEC project in San Diego a million years ago. This is when I worked for this mechanical contractor that was on the job. And people still talk about that project and the leadership on that project as one of the greatest things they'd ever been a part of. So it's like, there's those kinds of jobs. And then there's the ones where you're just pulling teeth trying to get through it, and just everybody's miserable and getting calls at 2:00 in the morning and, like just stressing out. And there's like focusing on and that's that Biogenetic thing did. They focused on the people. They had their own mission statement. They had their own vision for the project team. They had, a lot of team building. They had, before big rooms were a thing, they basically had that little village of builders that were all kind of in it together. And I think people felt really, really a part of something special, and that drove them to do a better job. And if you have those relationships with the people you're working with, you're even more prone to not wanting to let them down or to, to slack off or any of that kind of stuff. You're really going to want to put out the best you can because these people they matter to you. And so to me, that just makes sense. But I get that not everybody's like that.
Well, work is work. We're not supposed to care about each other. We can care about people at home, but not at work. So just get the job done and then you can go home.
I've tried to work in an environment like that. And some people can do it. And I can't.
I don't know if that's true or not. I don't know if it's true that I think some people have a higher tolerance.
Yeah.
And they can deal with it for longer. But I do think eventually they realize there's more to life than being a number or just doing your job. I mean, sometimes that fills a season in your life that it's needed, where I've got so much else going on right now. I can't put that kind of energy into where I work. And it's truly just a means for me to live. And it's not intentional. It's not like, ooh, yeah, I love the fact that I go to work and there's no culture, no one cares, and we don't talk about anything. I just do my job and go home. Some people, like I said, there's a time in your life where that is totally appropriate. So I don't want to dismiss that by accident. But I think you're right. There's a lot more energy that comes with, like you were describing in that project, where people genuinely cared about each other and they wanted to see people succeed.
Yeah. And I mean, even if you're talking about turnover and having to, like, how much does it take to bring a new person on, train them, get them acclimated to the company, all of that stuff, versus just keeping the person that you have there happy and making them feel like they're a part of something important. Your retention levels just change so dramatically. I worked for a company, this one will remain nameless, but it was not a professional services company. It was a product company. And literally when I was interviewing, and this should have clued me off that maybe this wasn't the right company to join, but somebody's like, are you sure you want to join this company? Do you know what the turnover rate is? And the turnover rate was so high that they were like, they were changing their marketing team like every year because it was so miserable there. They could not keep people for long enough to like really establish a team. It was wild. And I stayed there for a couple of years, and there was no culture at all there other than the CEO wants to see everything. He wants to see everything. He wants to sign everything. He wants to make the final decisions on everything. You are powerless. You don't matter. You might get yelled at in a meeting. You're going to get scapegoated at some point. You know, put everything in writing because you need to be able to cover your ass. Like all of that. And it was such a shock to me, having come from like a couple of different experiences that were so people focused and so team focused, to go into this. And it was just like, what is happening? It really shed a light to me. And it's why I think I've a couple of times kind of ventured off from the AEC world to do other things, and always want to come back to AEC because it's just different. The people focus is, even in the least people-centric companies, it's more people-centric than a lot of companies are. So I think oftentimes we probably don't even realize how lucky we are to be in the kind of industries that we're in. So, and working with the kind of people we work with, which is, you know, generally people who are interested in working with different teams and, you know, having to get things done and having different levels of expertise in things and being okay with that. The architect knows what the architect is doing, and the trades know what they're doing, and everybody has their role, and that's good. I don't know everything. So that's good that they have that expertise, because we need that on this job, and we're going to let them do it. And I think there are a lot of places where people think they know everything, and they really want to be able to control it all, which works if you're 5 people. But if you're growing and, you know, you have more than 100, and you're getting up there in the number of people, you have to start trusting people. And I think to trust people, you kind of have to know them, and you have to believe in them, and you have to, you know, all of these things, you have to be okay with their judgment. And all of that comes from, you know, knowing who they are and being able to give them the shot. And I just see it not work when people try to maintain too much control, and that it doesn't go well when you don't have trust in your team, when you don't know who they are and you don't believe in them. And it's painful when that happens, and people don't stay. So, and I look at DPR, I was there 20 years ago, 2006, well, 15 years ago. Most of the people I worked with then are still there, and they've all grown into these amazing roles. But how do they manage to do that? How do they manage to keep people for 20, 30 years? You know, that's pretty incredible that in this day and age for somebody to stay at a company for that long. And a lot of people do. So they're doing something right.
There's so much to unpack in there, Patty, because 30 things come like rushing to the forefront of my mind all at the same time. That whole idea of the intentionality component, right? Like, part of me goes, that sounds so aspirational, right? Like this whole, let's really focus on even everyone at the construction project, right? Everyone who's coming to that, who paying attention to the other people who are around you, you know, and I guess this applies inside your organization too. What you're assuming in that, which I love, is that I want to pay attention to anybody around me.
True.
Right? Like, I'm very comfortable inside my box. And, you know, maybe I'll peek over the edge of my box, but I want to go back down in my box and just take care of the tasks that are assigned to me.
And I would say maybe that person isn't the best leader for a team. Maybe they're a great independent contributor, or individual contributor, but perhaps they shouldn't be leading a group of people if they don't care about people.
Yes. And, and we promote people because sometimes they are really good individual contributors. They've been doing it a long time. And so we then promote them to positions of leadership, perhaps without that additional level of intentionality that you're seeing.
Yeah, I think that happens a lot. And I think to me, being a manager of people is just another role. It's not a step up from anything, right? Like it's a skill set, and you're helping people get their jobs accomplished. I think what we see a lot is that, well, you've accomplished a lot in this individual contributor role. You're really good at it. So in order to move up in your career, you have to start managing people. And I think that's a mistake, because I think some people are really great individual contributors and they would like to do that, but they feel like, oh, if in order for me to be successful, I have to take on this other thing. You don't. You can, keep doing the thing that you're doing that you do really well, that you love doing, and you don't like talking to people, so you just sit there and you focus on your spreadsheets, and that's great, and we need that, and that's super valuable. And there's this other person over there who hates spreadsheets, but they're pretty good kind of generalists, or they're good people. Those should be the ones that are kind of guiding the team. It's just a skill set. I feel like we consider them like these big seers, or there's big, the important thing, but it's to me, it's underneath all the other people, really. It's kind of the support system that helps all the other people do their jobs, and they're the ones that are getting stuff done. So to me, that management thing shouldn't really be seen as a step up in your career. It's just a different career. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, it does. I mean, I like the way that you kind of frame that. No, we don't normally see it that way, right? Normally that's one of the traditional paths of promotion.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it leads to a lot of managers who are not happy, and a lot of people who are not happy with their managers, and I had a guy that I worked with him, and he was sort of a mentor to me in the way he managed his teams, because his group was always super happy. Everybody wanted to work on his team. And his whole thing was, I hire people smarter than me, and I let them do their job, and I get things out of their way so they can, right? He didn't have to be the smartest guy in the room. He didn't want to be the smartest guy in the room. It's like, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. Like that's kind of the way I would think about it. If I do marketing, I'm not a graphic designer. That's great. If you need me to stumble through it, I will, but I'm not going to tell the graphic designer how to use Photoshop. I don't know as well as they do. Why would I get involved in that? Like, I kind of know what the vision is and what we're trying to accomplish. And then I trust their expertise to do that part of it. And I think that's where the best managers come from, is that we've got people around me that are smart, that know what they're doing. They're better at that than me, and I'm going to let them do it. And it takes a lot of humility, I think, which is a hard thing to.
Yeah.
As a total tangent, though, the Photoshop thing is super easy, because in the AEC industry, all you have to do is cut the people out of the picture that you've taken. So there's just a building there. Done.
Or use the rendered people.
The
rendered people
That's the whole
are nice.
point. It's about the people. If you look at websites that are all projects, it's pretty boring. And if you look at a lot of professional service companies, they all, like, our rule is like, it should have people in it. There should be people in every photo, because that's what this whole thing is about. It's about people doing something. And it just brings way more interest and vibrancy and, interest to anything. So I would say, if you're going to Photoshop anything out, Photoshop out the building.
It's awesome, because what's awesome to me is like I said, when we started, your belief system and the people first, your energy behind it, and your whole approach of like, why isn't everyone looking at it this way? Because this makes total sense. Just what you're talking about. I mean, I saw a post the other day that said something along the lines of, create a good culture, enact that culture, reap the profits. And I was like, why don't you just say, like, find the cure for cancer, cure cancer, everyone's okay. Because it's about as it's a slap in the face for how complicated the second step is. I mean, creating a culture like you talk about, finding somebody who actually genuinely does that, where they hire smart people, get things out of their way, and let them do things. You can look around a lot of organizations and see a lot of people who would say that's something we should aspire to, but that's not what's revered here. I
Mm.
don't get promoted when I have smarter people on my team. They will get promoted instead of me. So I need to be, or we don't reward leadership in that dynamic. When we see people who their whole job is to get things done, getting things done does not mean that they get things out of their team's way. Instead, and that's why we go back to build the building, we don't reward necessarily how good everybody felt on the project. I had one person tell me the other day, I could care less about people's feelings. I only focus on facts. And I actually laughed out loud when he told me, because we were in a meeting and I laughed out loud and I was like, oh my God, that explains so much, because you have blown apart pretty much every relationship that you have, and it's all based on how smart you are and how much knowledge you have, as opposed to the people you're talking to.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, there's just not that you should be bringing in people from just kind of all over the place and asking their opinion and getting their input on everything, but um, your way might not be the best way. And if you've been doing something for 30 years, there's probably a better way than the way you think is the best way to get it done. Sorry, but things have changed in the last. So you should probably listen to some of the people that have ideas on how to improve systems, that might have a better idea of how, modern technology is working, or things like that. Like, you, just because you've always done it that way doesn't mean it's the best way to do it. And it doesn't mean you're going to accomplish something. You might be able to accomplish it in half the time if you actually released your team to be able to do the things that they do well. And that, I mean, that all it requires hiring the right people and coaching and mentoring and all that stuff that just takes time and effort, and, a lot of practices that maybe you don't want to implement. But I think at the end of the day, the companies that do focus on that are going to be the ones that end up with the people that everybody wants on their teams, right? I mean, you as an owner, would you prefer, you have a 3-year project coming out? Do you want to work with somebody who's super surly and is just like, you're wasting my time every time you have a conversation with them? Or do you want to be able to, like, talk to them and get to the root of problems and solve things and actually move forward? And, it just seems to me like, why would you want to torture yourself with someone who's got no personal regard for others, like.
I remember early in my career, somebody, we were advocating to make sure that we had some time at the beginning of a project such as that for team building. And one of the internal stakeholders, leadership people, said, why would we need that? These people aren't professional. Don't they know how to work together? And I thought, that's a really interesting perspective. And I flipped it right back to him and said, well, you lead a group of nurses and physicians. Do you spend any time working on relationships and helping build a team? Or do you expect them all to be professional and they should already take the job knowing how to work together? And he kind of looked at me and went, huh, interesting. And so I think there's a lot of assumption that people innately know how to work together. Do the job, the technical aspects of the job, and you'll figure out the people stuff as you go. And that's just, they couldn't be farther from the truth. I think the three of us know that intuitively, but it's a reminder that if you're in an environment where the team building, the people development, the skills, I had somebody tell me the other day, we spend 100 times more money chasing work than we actually do investing in our own people. And that was a very large contractor. And I was like, damn, that's a heck of a statement. It's very true, though.
Yeah.
And so, because I think the development piece also, it's hard. And what you're talking about, I love it. I love the energy because your passion behind it is so true. And you're so right on. And if we can inspire just another person to pick up the cause and go pursue it where they are and advocate for it, then I think we've done something.
Yeah.
So.
And I would also say, if somebody asks you, well, don't they know how to work together? Say, yeah, they do. The first thing is to have a team building session. And that's how they learn, like that's how it starts. That's how you work together. Like,
that is spot on. That is spot on. Well, Patti, thank you for joining us on the podcast today. Appreciate you sharing all that you shared, and appreciate you taking the time out to be with us. If you want to learn more, go to rippleintent.org, find Patti, myself, John on LinkedIn. We're out there. Join our breakfast club, join a symposium if you find one in the near future. And until then, we will, I guess we'll just see you next time, right, John?
That's exactly right.
Thank you, guys.
Patti. Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Patti.